everyone, and it's a great pleasure to be with you today. My name is Rob Finlay. I'm the Head of Innovation Programs at AWS. My role and our team's role globally is to talk about Amazon's culture, to talk about Amazon's history, the things we've built, and also to run workshops and other strategy sessions with you and with customers to help you solve your problems using the AWS toolkit. Today I'm going to take you through the story of how Amazon's culture of innovation works. But I will start with the caveat that this is how Amazon innovates at scale. This is how we do things at our organization. This is not us telling you how you should innovate. You should definitely foster and forge your own culture of innovation in your organization that's unique to you. We'd love to share with you a bit about what we do to make sure you understand a bit about more about how we operate. So we start first with our mission. Our mission is to be Earth's most customer-centric company. It's a very wide, open-ended mission of sorts. You'll notice that it doesn't talk about a particular business unit like e-commerce or technology or a particular product. It doesn't talk about a particular customer set. It doesn't talk about a particular market or geography. It really only focuses all of us in our business of 1.5 million people around the customer that we're trying to design for. It really asks us to say, we can try and build lots of different things, we can try and do new things, as long as they are customer-centric in whatever we do. This gives us a great permission to explore new areas, to try new things, to make sure that we have the customer in mind whenever we are building a new business. And for us at Amazon, where innovation begins, we start with the customer and work backwards. This is a very simple mindset we have at Amazon that says, whatever the customer needs, let's design the best possible outcome we can for a customer and find a way for our business to deliver that. Find a way for our business to build a business model around that and really make sure we can create that win-win for us and for customers where we can. Now, why is it good to be customer-centric, say, over, for example, being product-centric or revenue-centric, right, or competitive-obsessed? We think that it's great to be customer-centric because it gives us somewhat an external stakeholder that we are beholden to. It gives us this external force that we can't control, that we are always trying to deliver for. For example, Jeff said here in the 2016 letter to shareholders, there are many advantages to a customer-centric approach, but here's the big one. Key line here, customers are always beautifully, wonderfully dissatisfied. Even when they report being happy and business is great. Even when they don't know it yet, customers want something better, and your desire to delight customers will drive you to invent on their behalf. So the key line there is customers are always beautifully, wonderfully dissatisfied. This embracing of customers always pushing us forward, customers always wanting more from us. And that forces us to proactively try and find ways to design things that we anticipate their needs. It means that we are all aligned internally around the customer outcome wherever possible. And that's why when you think of Amazon as a very broad group, we have such a diverse range of businesses, right? There are about 65 odd different brands, major brands, there are hundreds more. We're in every different industry you could probably think of. The main ones are things like obviously the marketplace, delivery logistics, healthcare, entertainment with Prime, obviously AWS Cloud itself, and other areas. But because this mission allows us to explore new ideas for customers, we then go and build new ideas and new products. Now, some of these on the screen here have been decommissioned, so we also turn things off at the same time. If things aren't working or customers don't like them or need them anymore, we're quite happy to turn things off or to shut things down. And that's part and parcel of a customer-centric culture that's based around experimentation and building new things. So let's focus on, for example, the Amazon marketplace, Amazon.com retail store. We start with the customer experience, and that helps our business grow. How does it do that? We use these flywheel diagrams quite often to explain the positive consequence of doing things for customers. So, for example, a great customer experience could be with Amazon retail, same-day delivery, or really accurate recommendations of what a product might be, or the need, or the lack of the need, hopefully, for a lot of customer service and person-to-person contact. We think that's a positive, seamless experience that you might want. So if we have a great customer experience, we think that therefore it increases the traffic that comes to Amazon.com. The consequence of that means that it helps make that more attractive to third-party sellers. In fact, Amazon.com is now more of a third-party marketplace than us selling directly to customers. Those sellers therefore increase the selection that customers have to choose from, which we think improves the customer experience. And you add on top of that, therefore, with more volume comes a lower cost structure. We put more volume through our fulfillment centers, we can obviously maximize the efficiencies of scale, and therefore we can lower prices. So what are we doing here? We're really looking at what we call 3 durable customer needs. We're doubling down on the things that we know customers want, not trying to guess what they might want in the future. We're doubling down on 3 things. One is, customers want a better experience, not a poorer one. It sounds obvious. Customers want more choice, not less. And of course, as customers, we always want prices to be lower, not higher. So these things, if you find these things in your industry or your business that you know to be true, that you know customers will always want, and you try and keep delivering that each day, we think that makes our business grow organically without the need for excessive marketing or, we create this non-linear scale without us having to do the hard work. The flywheel starts to turn on its own energy, essentially. And we have flywheels like these for AWS, for other parts of our business, and we've developed them for customers as well. So it's a great way to pull together different parts of your business and the kind of work that it does to create this positive consequence through the flywheel. So what are the 4 components of our Amazon culture of innovation? These are the 4 here: culture, architecture, mechanisms, and organization. I'm going to go through each one of these and just give you some examples of how they work and some of the ways that we do things at Amazon. This isn't a bad framework for you to think about also for your own culture of innovation as well. It's not a bad way to think of the areas you think you could affect the way you hire, the way you work, the way you organize teams, the way you deliver technology to your employees. It's a good structure for us. We have a product called Pulse Check, which helps you assess your own business against these 4 framework ideas. So let's start with culture. Really, it's about people, right? This customer obsession, hiring builders, supporting them with a belief system. What do we mean by that? We start, of course, at Amazon with our 16 leadership principles. These are available online. You Google these and find them. But these are really critical. This is the DNA of our business. This is the language we use very often, every day. It's the way we hire. It's the way we organize ourselves. It's our annual cycle to assess each other on how we're doing. It's really very critical at Amazon, and these are very common. So what you'll notice is there's quite a lot of them. It started with about 5 or 6, I think around 1999, 2000, around there. Because we wanted to project to the world, what does it mean to be an Amazonian? Why should you join this organization? What sort of people do we want to attract? And critically, these leadership principles wasn't invented by Jeff one morning on a whiteboard. It was what do we do when we are performing at our best? What's the mirror that we can put up against our organization to show when we are working well? These LPs list out the ways we do things when we're doing well. You'll also notice that many of them, hopefully, are what you would say are doing words. They're actions, they're things you can do. So for example, invent and simplify, learn and be curious, think big, earn trust. It has a bias for action, it's another one. There's a bias for action around doing something for the customer. The reason why there's started with 5, now there's 16 is because it says at the top there, unless you know better ones. These are our leadership principles, unless you know better ones. A very common phrase at Amazon is, unless you know a better way. Pardon me. It encourages us all to think about ways to improve what we have. It encourages us all to speak up and say, I think this could be better if we did it in a different way. The last 2 on the bottom left have been added in the last couple of years, which are more reflective of our large scale. It says there, strive to be Earth's best employer. Again, 1.6 million people. We have an obligation to make sure everyone is well cared for. And success and scale bring broad responsibility. My colleague Anne is presenting now on our sustainability efforts. It's really mostly about the impact we make on the world, on communities, on other businesses as well. So you'll see these quite common in Amazon if you work with us. These are the terms we use all the time. So let's start with one. Invent and simplify, for example. An old example here of Kindle. Who's got a Kindle here? Anyone got a Kindle? Yep, great. It's a pretty old example, right? It's been around for a long time. But it started with a simple premise, which was we weren't the first organization to create a e-reader device. We weren't the first organization to think about how we could digitize book content. Of course, we saw, like everyone else did, the need to produce this device, but when film and music was going to streaming services, books would be the same. And we developed the device on the left really as a response to what we thought was a better experience than the current ones in the market. So at the time, if you remember back then, your e-reader device had to be connected to a laptop with a cable. It was a bit of an onerous process. But the idea we embedded in the Kindle was essentially a mobile phone SIM card or a SIM chip that could download any book ever written anywhere in the world in 60 seconds. That was the user experience we wanted to promise. And so the use case there was things like, well, I'm about to jump on a plane. I want to grab this book before I go. I'm going to sit by the pool at a resort on holiday. I want 10 books instead of just one. Really, the use cases here were driving the outcome. Now, you'll notice that the original hardware wasn't particularly pretty. I remember it coming out thinking, that's pretty underwhelming. But it was really an experiment or a prototype we put into market. And we let the customers who use the device help us refine that in market production, in market testing. And so you can see on the right-hand side, now the form factor has changed quite a lot. It's now up to its, I think, 17th or 18th iteration, and it constantly evolves all the time. So this customer experience drives the device design itself. And even with AWS itself, we think about the durable needs of customers. We hope that you'll have a good experience. We hope you have lots of choice about what you might need to use, and we hope that the price is right for you. We have over 134 price reductions since 2006, and there are over 200 services to choose from, mostly like Lego bricks that you can combine to solve problems. So let's talk about bias for action, for example. What does that mean? We all want to get moving and get things done in business, but we think that speed matters in business almost over anything else. Not just because we want to get to market faster or make a return faster. It's mostly about rapidly moving through ideas and to see what works. Many decisions and actions are reversible and do not need extensive study. We value calculated risk-taking. So under each of the leadership principles, there's a short description. So when you find those online, you can see that. So in software business, we think that many decisions and actions are reversible. What we reduce these ideas down to what we call a one-way or a two-way door. What does that mean? It's very permissive language to say you should try something out, and if it fails, it's not a problem. So a one-way door is we're going to go through this metaphorical door. We're going to commit ourselves to a big idea, building a data center, building a warehouse, launching a new product. And we're going to commit the farm to that now, as opposed to what we would prefer to do, which is make things more of a two-way door. We're going to go through this metaphorical door, run a small experiment with a small team, with a small budget, in a small space of time, and then come back through that door if it doesn't work. Now, we didn't invent experimentation, but again, for a large company like ours, we want to give everyone the permission and the positive language about trying new things out. We use this language like, let's do a two-way door and see where we go. The second part here is mechanisms. What's a mechanism? Well, a mechanism is not necessarily a process or a preordained way of working. It's really about asking us to think of what's an input we need to react to. What's an opportunity we have? What's a customer problem we're trying to solve? What's an opportunity that they are presenting to us? What's the way that we want to evolve a business? And the output should be hopefully a great customer-centric idea that's good for the customer and good for business as well. In the middle, obviously, is a bunch of tools you can use and adopt and iterate on those and inspect the results and see if you can improve that over time. These are also what we call mental models as well, mostly because we would say, here's a way of working, here's something that's universal to Amazon. How can you use this in your organization? How would you apply it in your context with your customers? It's very different to where we are today in Sydney versus where someone might be in London, for example, in a different sector. One of the best examples of that is what we call working backwards. I mentioned that at the start. Working backwards is our mechanism for innovation. Essentially, it's a variation or a simplified version of design thinking. People think that obviously Amazon is a very large technology company. Of course we are. I would also posit that we are also a very good design company, although we don't recognize it. I think we design outcomes and solutions for customers really well. So it's a mechanism for innovation. Use it to get clarity, not to document what you've already decided to do. Working backwards, like design thinking, asks us to say, I've got an idea, but wait, what's the real customer problem here? Let's go back to what the customer's trying to achieve and work out the best possible solution for them. And then try and find a way to build that. The image on the right-hand side there is, you might know, Amazon Go, which is one of our cashierless retail stores. So if you're not familiar, essentially we've thought that the experience of high-paced retail, for example, like convenience stores or in locations like stadiums, including Marvel Stadium in Melbourne, or airports, train stations, those kind of places. The act of paying for something can sometimes take longer than the act of shopping itself. And so we thought that was the pain point that we could remove with technology. Around a decade ago, we invented this this Amazon Go technology. So you scan a QR code on the entry gates there. The technology now understands who you are and what your identity might be in a tokenized way. You walk into the store, you take what you want off the shelf, and you just walk out. And like an Uber payment, for example, the payment happens in the background, and you're sent the receipt. The technology in the shelves and in the ceiling understands what object you're picking up off the shelf and adds it to your virtual cart, essentially, a virtual basket. This technology now is an AWS product. You can use it in any situation. We're doing it with things like mines, where we're working out the movement of trucks or objects or rocks out of a mine. We use it in hospitals for things like PPE and clothing and equipment. It's been deployed in a stadium for merch at a football stadium in America to grab t-shirts and other things. So really it's endless what you can do. The technology is called Just Walk Out Technology, JWO. This is a really good example of working backwards in action. It's helping us think, okay, what's the best possible experience we could think of when you're shopping for something? And the customer line is, I just want to walk out. And the technology challenge of this was very hard. It took about 3 years to come to market. It took a lot of iteration, experimentation. You'll see later on. But we really think this is one of the ways that this is the future of retail. So where we start, obviously, with working backwards is we understand who is the customer, be specific about context and needs. And we would think that everyone's a customer. Everyone's a user, not just the end consumer on the street, but certainly, for example, if you're a startup founder in the crowd today, or if you're running a large line of business in a company, or if you're a fellow employee of Amazon, you are a customer of this process, of this mechanism. So we have to make sure we dive deep and understand who the customer is really, really well, and find out what their needs and wants are. Here are the 5 questions that we use for the working backwards mechanism. Look at how basic they are, right? The first 2 talk about who is the customer and what's the problem or opportunity they have. It makes us think about the customer first and dive into their problems. It makes us make sure that we aren't coming to a problem with a preordained idea that we think's right. It asks us to be quite humble, hopefully, about what we're trying to solve for. What is the solution and the most important customer benefit? This is obviously the ideation phase, right? What's the way that we can solve this problem for a customer? What's the benefit that it brings to them? How do we describe the solution and experience to customers, and how do we test that solution? These are the action and the work you do after you have an idea. So we describe it to someone else who's not in the room with us or to a customer itself, and how do we test it? What's the metric we can get to sort of somewhat validate this idea or this approach? So the way we express an idea is through what we call a PR FAQ, so a press release with FAQs. This is our customer-facing expression of an idea. This forces us to write up an idea that we would share internally, initially, in customer-centric language. It forces us to write an idea up in the way that it expresses the customer benefit as opposed to just the ROI. For example, in this press release, you would probably not talk about what profit it brings to your organization. It would talk mainly about the benefit that it brings to customers. And the press release is literally 1 A4 page. Every big business in Amazon, or small, or any iteration of an idea or product at Amazon has started life as a 1-page PR press release. So you're forced to communicate a large, complex idea with simplicity and clarity that any of us could understand on first read. The FAQs are all the questions that you will naturally get when a person reads the document from your customers or your stakeholders. So things like, how much does it cost? How do I use it? What if I need help? What if I want to decommission it? The stakeholders might ask things like, now they'll ask things like, what's the ROI? Who's going to build it? What's it going to be run on? Which partners will we involve? And then visuals, we think, add to the idea. You might express, for example, a customer storyboard like that. It might be a technology diagram, a business diagram, for example. But we think at Amazon, if everyone's enabled to innovate across our 1.6 million people, everyone can write a 1-page document, we think. Not everyone can write code, draw beautiful pictures, make a beautiful PowerPoint slide, and so on. And on that, something we don't use a lot in Amazon to make really important decisions is PowerPoint. The story goes that Jeff was in a meeting 20 odd years ago and was being pitched by a colleague internally about a new idea that this person wanted to get approval on. And essentially, like these slides, it was very minimal in content. It was basically some dot points, a couple of pictures. And every time Jeff got to a slide, he had to keep asking very detailed questions. Tell me the data point about this. How's this going to work? Tell me the exact way this will be built, and so on. To the point where Jeff said, look, all the questions that I have seem to be in your notes there. All the data points you're pulling out are in your notes. Just give me the notes. Right? I get the idea on the slides, but I need the detail to make a better decision faster. And so from that point on, apparently he walked back into our S team, which is now Andy Jassi's sort of leadership team, and said, from now on, for important decisions we need to make as a company or as a team, we will not use PowerPoint anymore. We will use a document that writes up, like an academic document or a scientific paper, we'll use a document to express an idea with detailed data points and detailed arguments. So, you might have heard of the written narrative. A peer FAQ is essentially is a version of that document. We're famous for our 6-page memos. Again, a plan, for example, for next year or a new business unit will also come with a 6-page narrative document. Now, 6 pages to you guys might sound like either a lot of material or not a lot. Right? It's hard to write a document. So why do we use documents? How does it work? When you're writing a document about a new idea, as you write it with detailed data points and detailed logic in plain language, you are yourself questioning what you are writing. Does this make sense to me as I'm writing this document? If it doesn't, then maybe it's not a good idea. And then what I would do is I'd bring in my document, my peer FAQ or my narrative to you. I'd give you all a printout or a digital version, and we would do what we call an Amazon doc read. It's a weird experience to go into what we call a doc read, which is essentially we come into a meeting room for an hour. The first 20 minutes I give you the document, give you some context, and then for 20 minutes we would sit in silence individually reading the document. There's no pre-reading, there's no jumping ahead, there's no questions in advance. This is the material I have to give to you. Let's all absorb it at the same moment with the same depth. After everyone has read the document, and as you can see, covered it in red ink, questioning everything, we then have a conversation about the idea. I don't get line number 36, I'm not sure what that means. Data point number 1, does that really make sense? Would a customer really say that? Why are we doing this? So at that point, we actually can make more informed decisions faster on the back of a detailed document. We find that's really effective. You can have a room of a couple hundred people like this, and we can all make a decision within an hour about what we want to do. So I encourage you to try that, for example. Maybe documents is a way you can express a big idea in your organization as opposed to a PowerPoint. How do we think of new businesses to work on at Amazon? These are the 4 things that Andy Jassy has talked about in our organization, at his level, of course. The questions your leadership will ask when they read a peer FAQ or a narrative would be, do we really have a differentiated approach here? Are we doing an iteration of someone else's work? Is this a follow, a me too kind of idea? Or are we standing out with something new and different? I would argue that just workout technology is a bit different. Is the opportunity being well served today? Is someone already doing it well already? Are we just following someone else? If we were successful, could it be big and have a reasonable return on capital? That's an obvious question to ask. What's the business case? Do we have the competence in that area? And if not, can we acquire it quickly? So we have an idea and speed matters in business. Do we have a team standing by ready to work on this? Can we move forward fast? Do we have to go and buy a business? Obviously at Amazon we've bought big businesses, we spin up teams as well to do these things. And that's why these large ideas have come to the world, right? They start life as a peer FAQ, they go through this internal analysis and approvals, and things like building data centers or a robotics business or making movie studios or building a Kuiper satellite network have all come from this simple mechanism of a peer FAQ to a narrative to going through experimentation and being built. So big ideas start as a 1-page document. Let's move to architecture. This is mostly about technology. I'm not going to talk about the technology itself, it's mostly the mental approach. So technical structure and tools that support rapid growth and change. This mysterious looking image here on the right-hand side is essentially our EC2 cluster of capability for Amazon.com. And of course, as you know, we've obviously decoupled all that architecture, created these single-purpose services that are all connected together through APIs to work together. The story goes that at some point around 2011, Jeff sent out a pretty famous email internally. It said, if you build a new service that has a customer-facing or internal benefit, that service must now be put into a central repository for anyone else to access and use on their own projects. If you do not put your service in the central place for someone else to use, you don't work at Amazon anymore. Jeff. That was essentially the email. It was a top-down mandate that whatever we build, of course, should be able to be reusable by others in our organization. And the obvious benefit is now there's a huge collection of services that are available to us internally that it enhances the speed at which we can develop new ideas. I heard a story that one Amazon.com retail country was launched within like 6 months because all the technology was essentially existing elsewhere. All of our, even our fulfillment centers in Amazon retail are a template. The one in Sydney, for example, and Kemps Creek is the same as about 4 or 5 others around the world. And at any point, if the guys who run that fulfillment center have an improvement to make that's mostly software driven or even process, it's essentially overnight uploaded to every other fulfillment center globally. So this idea of being reusable doesn't just apply to code, it applies to process, ways of working, slide decks, whatever it might be. So we think that this really accelerates the pace of innovation in our organization. It allows for this instant experimentation. If services and things we've built are available to each other, then I can grab that and use it today. I can use that in a very small micro experimental way to run a bunch of different experiments to see if it works. It lowers the cost of failure for us, right? It can lower that cost down to dollars or cents sometimes. And that therefore enables that rapid scale and iteration that we need. So even in our own organization, we've been able to use, for example, AI and ML to sell 4,000 products per minute on Amazon.com. We obviously ship 1.6 million packages per day. I think last year in our own network we did 6 or 7 billion packages delivered. Billions of Alexa interactions each week, and we skipped a line at checkout with Just Walk Out I mentioned before. So this technology approach really has helped us move these things quite rapidly to market and develop them over time. Now, while speed is important, we can't necessarily avoid the fact that we've had to learn the hard way for a long time. One thing I'm really impressed by Amazon working here is how long we've been thinking about these sort of things. You think about our fulfillment center network, there's about 700 odd different fulfillment center locations globally, of very large and very small. The concept of this, the fulfillment center, if you're not familiar with it, is it's all robotically enabled. The products come to the person on the outside that picks and packs them. We've had to learn these things the hard way. And we think, as Andy says, there's no compression algorithm for experience. You can't fast track a lot of these things. You've got to go through the hard work and the pain of finding the way that things work and the way things don't work. Last section here, organization. We often like to create small, empowered teams that own what they create. So we try to avoid this idea of large teams, large empires of people, huge hierarchies, for the sake of moving quickly at speed. So what do? Well, we use the leadership principles to help hire builders. If you have worked at Amazon or gone through what we call the loop, it's the interview process to join Amazon. It's pretty rigorous. Let me take you through it. So for example, there will be, up front there might be a phone screen to make sure you're a working human being and you actually have the skills we want to bring in the business. It's mostly a functional check. And then you go through what's called the loop interview process. The loop interview process is a cultural check to make sure you fit the culture. It's really quite involved. So in one day, for example, I had 6 interviews back to back, not with HR, but with my future team members. And they were asking me questions to give them data points and stories and anecdotes about when I displayed the leadership principles. For example, someone might say, tell me a time when you had to dive deep, there's the LP, dive deep into the data and you found a data point that you know your customers will be unhappy with. What did you do? How did you resolve that situation? Right? So it's actually about showing me the stories and the anecdotes and the data points that said, when did you display an Amazonian leadership principle? It's quite rigorous, you go through the whole day, and then the next step is usually a writing exercise to make sure you can write documents. And within about a week is our SLA essentially. Within a week, you get essentially feedback to say, yes, you're inclined or not inclined to move forward. And it's everyone's job at Amazon to help recruit our future colleagues. And there's one person though who's an interviewer who's not in your future team, who's not got a vested interest in whether this role is filled or how urgent it is to get this headcount done. They're called the bar raiser. A super experienced Amazon person who's done hundreds of interviews and gone through a very rigorous certification process. Their job is to say, I don't care if this role needs to be filled, this person is or is not meeting the cultural standards of Amazon. Is this person better than 50% of the team they're joining? Is the somewhat subjective metric. And the outcome of that is we often build people who are quite entrepreneurial, people who are builders, as we call them, people who want to grab things and own them and try new things out. That's the outcome of the LP and loop process. And we often put people in around an idea, whether it's a PRFAQ or something else, into what we call a two-pizza team. You might have heard of this term. The casual language here is a team that's large enough to be fed by two pizzas, right? Depending on your pizza and depending on your person. I've probably been a two-pizza team myself quite often, but it's a great way for us to think about a team that's large enough to get things done, but not so big that it becomes too cumbersome or too weighty. So if an idea grows, we need more people, we'll split the idea up into smaller teams. So it says small, decentralized, nimble teams. These teams are often autonomous, have ownership in what they do. They'll have a product manager or a project manager that leads this project and can quite often make decisions themselves about what this product should be. They don't have to wait for some monthly management approval. They're like, we hope, an internal startup that can move as fast as possible. Own and run what you build. Right? This creates ownership from the PRFAQ document right through to launch and beyond. The people who wrote the first PRFAQ for Amazon Go built the prototypes. They built the first prototypes like these. They did the first visuals. They built the first store. They built the next 20 stores. They ran those stores. The lady who ran that has only just recently moved on to a new role. So be careful what you write in a PRFAQ. It might become your new job to make that launch and operate. It's not handed off to operations or someone else, it's your job. It's a really positive environment to work in that way, because it means if you've got a great idea, you're the one closest to it, the most passionate about it, go make it happen. Right? And most managers are obliged to give you the time, the space, and the support to make an idea come to life, if it's customer-centric, if it aligns to our mission. You'll see here Amazon Go started life as a PRFAQ, but also as a little drawing. You might think that drawing is a bit underwhelming to show Jeff Bezos, for example, but the fidelity of your mock-ups and your experiments should match the maturity of your idea. If it's an early idea, then don't waste time on I've done this a lot, pixel perfect screen mock-ups. Don't waste time on things that may not eventuate in the future. And you'll see the right-hand side, top right, is the way they tried to design a space in which there was no cashiers. It looks more like a train station gantry, right? More you're moving through a space. And then, of course, the fairly cheap-looking pieces of timber and shelving there is just a way we probably would have gone on to Craigslist and found some bits and bobs to get an idea working. What's the best check-in experience? What's the best shopping experience? This rapid experimentation, as I'm sure you do, was really critical for the success of this. So the whole point of a two-pizza team also is to fail mostly, to find ways that don't work as much as they do. So failure and invention are inseparable twins. Imagine your CEO of your organization saying that, hey, when we invent in a way, it has to fail mostly. That's just the nature of things. To invent, you have to experiment, and if you know in advance that it's going to work, it's not an experiment. Right? You're going to go in blind and think, well, this could go anywhere, let's see if it works. That's where you invent new things and you go into new ground. And it doesn't always work. We fail a lot, right? Anyone remember the Amazon Fire Phone? Anyone got one of those? I've got one in my cupboard still, it's a bit of a relic. That was probably one of our biggest failures. We tried to create a new phone to obviously compete alongside Apple and Android. It was essentially driven by the Prime ecosystem and membership, a way for you to engage with that content, buy products, talk to other people. And we launched that phone to market and it failed. And Jeff himself was heavily involved, and actually the best learning there was we took our eye off the ball of what customers really wanted. We thought we knew better. It was a pretty humbling experience. We wrote off about $200 million worth of hardware. But Jeff has said, look, hey, that's life at Amazon. We'll have our first billion-dollar failure at some point. That's just the way we roll sometimes. And a lot of the technology in that phone has been reused elsewhere, in like Alexa devices and other things. So these are the 4 pillars of our culture of innovation. There's much more detail behind each one. I've done this for 3 hours before, I've done it for 10 minutes. Happy to share more. But this is not a bad sort of structure for you to think about for your own culture of innovation in your organisation. How you're hiring people, how you're communicating, how you're making decisions together, how you're giving them permission to experiment, what are your leadership principles, what's your mission? What are the mechanisms or ways of working on the mental models you could deploy that are universal, like working backwards, but very locally applied? There's no in between, right? Here's the mechanism you can use, you decide how to deploy it in your own business. The architecture of your tools, are they available for me to use now in a small, rapid way at a really cheap cost that helps us move forward really fast? And can I access someone else's tools that they've built themselves? How do we organise small teams around an idea? How can we get 6 to 10 people as a 2-pizza team to go and make this PRFAQ come to life through experimentation, through mock-ups, through builds and so on? There are lots of ways that we can help you at Amazon if you'd like. For example, working backwards is a workshop that I run. So if you've got a problem statement you're trying to solve for your customers, we'd love to come and work on that with you. There's a whole bunch of other ways here. Another interesting one here is product operating model. A lot of people are saying, well, we want to move away from this traditional functional hierarchy or geographical. Can we focus our entire organization around products? At Amazon, everything externally that you see has a product team working on it, like Just Walk Out. But so do many internal things. For example, this PowerPoint deck has a team behind it that manages this content and evolves it over time. There's a dedicated team that every year is trying to improve it and improve the metrics and the outcomes we get. So I want to thank you very much for being here today. Make sure you go to skillbuilder.aws. We'd love you to learn some more skills like innovation practice, like all about technology. Redeem your free 7-day trial. There's a whole bunch of things you can do there. I want to thank you very much. Please reach out if you'd like. We'd love to talk to you more. We've got lots of ways we can help my team and others. And please, yes, do fill out the survey if you can. We'd love to get some feedback on today and learn how we can improve. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob.